Do an introduction. They told me to introduce everybody, so I'm going to keep going. So up next we have Jordan Quintal. He is a seasoned web developer of 15 years. He owns his own web development firm, thegenius.ca. They specialize in WordPress developments, plugin development, and on and offline services. He also handles the business management, product management, and some development work. So without further ado, here's Jordan on WordPress accessibility.
Thank you very much. Many of those have been asking about Twitter. There it is. Follow us, tweet about us. Okay, so today's topic is website accessibility, specifically accessibility for the physically and mentally challenged or disabled individuals of the world. In a nutshell, the presentation is going to examine the growing movement of website accessibility, why it's important, and why people should be using it for their everyday development. We'll get into some of the history behind it and what's involved in the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative organization. We'll also get into an overview of some generalized website accessibility guidelines and practices. And then from there, we get into more WordPress-specific accessibility, which includes some mentions about the WordPress accessibility group, as well as some tools that can be helpful to make your WordPress websites more accessible. So that's pretty much the presentation in a nutshell. To start, who am I? I'm Jordan Quintal, a 15-year web development veteran. I've done everything from HTML to Flash animations to PHP to WordPress, other platforms. I've been working with WordPress for 6 years. When it started as a very small blogging tool, we definitely picked up on it as it grew and continued to use it. Currently, I own and operate two businesses. One is thegenius.ca, which is our core company that deals with web development, specifically WordPress development, and recently we got into Android development as well. The second company that we operate is called Agent Accelerator. It's essentially the same idea, but is niched towards the real estate market. So what we've done there is we built WordPress packages and WordPress plugins that specifically cater to real estate agents and real estate brokerages. Alternatively, I'm actually working on two new ventures, WP Genius, which is going to be a resource for video tutorials, as well as other tutorial tools for WordPress development, and CommunityDisability.ca, which I'm hoping will be an online resource for people with disabilities relative to the media industry, so resources, job opportunities, events, stuff like that. I've been to many WordCamps across North America. This is my fourth presentation. I've been in Toronto, I did Ottawa, and here in Buffalo. So that's a bit about me, what I've done, and why I'm here. At any time, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw your hand up and I'll definitely get to you. So what is web accessibility? Well, according to the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative, which you can find at www.w3.org/WIA/intro/accessibility. So the W3C launched the Web Accessibility Initiative in 1997, endorsements by the White House and other W3C members. It has several working groups and interest groups that work on guidelines, technical reports, educational materials, and other documents that relate to several different components of web accessibility. So they basically organize all the standardizations, all the different tools, and all the different guidelines and documents relative to web accessibility. The components that make up the different materials and reports include web content, web browsers, media players, authoring tools, and evaluation tools. So these are all the components that kind of make up web accessibility and what they, and the different guidelines that kind of go with that. So millions of people have disabilities that affect their use of the web. Currently, most websites and web software have accessibility barriers that make it difficult and impossible for many people with disabilities to use the web. So clearly, in the real world and in the virtual world, there are barriers for people with disabilities that have to endure. So the idea with web accessibility is to make that easier. Even though the real world has barriers that people will never be able to break, I think that in the virtual world, we can make strides to eliminating those barriers and making it completely accessible for anyone and everyone, which I think with the dawn and the evolution of technology is going to be more and more possible. It's kind of exciting for those that deal with that particular clientele or that know people or whatever the case may be. The future definitely is looking bright in that regard. So web accessibility means that people with disabilities can use the web. More specifically, web accessibility means that people with disabilities can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web. So not only can they be able to use certain sites, they should be able to perceive it and understand it, as well as get around and interact with certain websites. Most importantly as well, they should be able to contribute to the web. So anyone with a particular disability should have the opportunity to contribute to any web project, open source, whatever the case may be. One of the roles of the Web Accessibility Initiative is to develop guidelines and techniques that describe accessibility solutions for web software and web developers. Again, basically building the standards, building the guidelines that can be used universally, can be used around the world, can be used online, and that is kind of the overall what they consider to be international standard for web accessibility. So a lot of stuff there. Encourage anyone that wants to learn a bit more. They've got some great stuff on Wikipedia as well as the w3.org site. There's lots of great information on this particular topic. So here are some organizations that kind of make up the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. There are definitely several groups that handle specific areas of accessibility. First being Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines Working Group. Now, authoring tools is anything that creates content or that creates something. So a program that creates something else would be an authoring tool. So what this particular working group focuses on is the authoring tool interface, making sure that the actual authoring tool is accessible for the web, as well as focusing on the content or whatever is being produced by said authoring tool. So both aspects are looked at and documented so that not only does the tool itself, not only is the tool accessible, but whatever it creates is also accessible. There's the Education and Outreach Working Group, which focuses on materials for training. They build all the documents so that they can spread them across the other organizations for training and educational purposes. There's the Evaluation and Repair Tools Working Group, and that's specifically for focused on tools that are used to evaluate websites. So if you go online and you do a bunch of Google searches on web accessibility tools, you're going to find different websites and different applications that you can actually plug in URLs, and it's actually going to tell you how well or how poorly your website stands up in terms of accessibility, whether it be for the visually impaired or in terms of anything to do with physical challenges or disabilities as well. They do a lot of programs that evaluate websites to make it easier for developers in the end to help them make their sites more accessible. So these tools are actually very important and kind of crucial in the whole ideal, the whole movement of web accessibility. So they're very useful. There's a lot of them out there. I'll be showing a few later on in the presentation. Moving forward, there's the Protocols and Formats Working Group, which focuses on reviewing the guidelines before they're officially published. So they actually make sure that anything that gets created or anything before made official runs through this group, and they polish it up and make sure that everything is clean and legit. From there, there's Research and Development, which focuses on creating new techniques, creating new guidelines, and coming up with new ideas to extend web accessibility. There's a user agent accessibility. User agents is anything like a browser or an extension or plugin that is used to access the web. So their focus is on improving browser and plugin and extension accessibility. So not only can websites be more accessible, but browsers can also be more accessible, which is also very helpful. And then obviously there's interest group, which is for anyone that wants to know about news or announcements or anything related to the Web Accessibility Initiative. There's a group that kind of handles that. There's content accessibility, which deals with content, which could be anything from text, images, audio, video, forms, or any rich internet application. Their focus is on making sure that not only are the websites accessible, but all the content within it has to be accessible as well. And then there's the coordination group, which kind of coordinates all of the above. So those are the different organizations and different components to the entire initiative. And this kind of breaks down each section and kind of why it's important and kind of how it works. And each of them are kind of work together to make the whole initiative work concisely and effectively. So next we have some web content. We have the Web Content Accessibility Guideline 2.0, which you can find online, WCAG 2.0. So this is just a brief description of kind of more current guidelines and more current trends in terms of website accessibility. So I'm going to go over some of the principles real quickly, some of the more notable points, just to give you kind of a broad idea of what's involved and how you can use it. So the first principle is perceivable. Information and user interface components must be presentable to users in a way they can perceive. So things like text alternatives, providing text alternatives for any non-text content, like you have alt text for your images. In case somebody can't see an image, that alt text can be used to communicate what's on the page. There's time-based media, adaptable media, creating content that can be presented in different ways. For example, simpler layouts without losing information or structure. So using familiar structures and familiar formats that even if somebody who might have difficulty seeing the site, we can still know that whoever built it is following a specific format. Like in North America, we generally read from left to right, top to bottom. So you wouldn't necessarily build a site that is outside of that if you're in North America, because you know that people are comfortable with those particular formats. Making things really simple, but very familiar. And distinguishable, making things for users to see and hear content, including separating foregrounds and backgrounds. So that basically has a lot to do with contrasting colors and people that may be colorblind or whatnot. Being able to distinguish between foregrounds and backgrounds in different colors is very important. So making that much easier in those particular areas will ensure that when somebody gets to the site, no matter what their limitations are, they'll still be able to perceive that site. Second is operable, so operation. User interface components and navigation must be operable. So being able to actually use the site, interact with the site, no matter what your limitations are, is also important. The first one being keyboard accessibility. So if there's things that require clicks or other specific interactions, make it also keyboard accessible. So somebody can do anything they want with the site with a keyboard. Enough time. So if you have any sliders or anything that's moving, giving a person enough time to read it and interact with that content is also very important. The third one says seizures, which I know may sound a little bit funny, but you're not going to want to throw up content that is like some kind of 70s disco where there's lights flashing and flaring, because somebody that is prone to seizures may have one, which you definitely don't want when people are accessing your site and want them to come back.
Actually, my brother, we found out that he had epilepsy from Windows 95
Really?
screens. You know, like the one with the flying windows?
Yeah, really?
We have a feeling that might set off a very
There you go.
So,
Perfect example.
thank you, Windows.
Yeah. Should upgrade.
This is like a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. So that's, I mean, yeah, even though that may sound like a silly guideline, it's actually pretty important. You don't want to have content that is going to cause seizures or epileptic episodes or whatever the case may be. And then moving forward, obviously, navigable, making sure that it's easy to navigate, easy to find things, and easy to determine where things are. So making the flow of information and structure of your website straightforward, fluent, not confusing. I mean, a lot of the times, sticking to kind of standardized kind of formats and layouts, even though a lot of people want to go outside of the box, is usually the best way, because no matter what language you speak or no matter what your limitations are, you're going to be able to use that site because it's familiar and it's easy. So principle 3 is being understandable. Information and the operation of user interface must be understandable. People should be able to read and understand what you've created. So the first one obviously is readable, make text and content readable and understandable, which makes perfect sense, whether it be the ability to zoom in or increase font sizes, or being able to change, I guess, colors and whatnot will definitely help making things a little bit more readable. Predictability, making web pages appear and operate in predictable ways. And this is kind of where I was touching on staying within kind of standardized formats and standardized layouts that is predictable. People that may have vision difficulties will know that what they're dealing with and how a site's built, and they'll be able to easily navigate their way around just by understanding kind of how standard websites kind of operate and look. So being predictable is definitely an advantage. And then input assistance, help users avoid and correct mistakes. So things like auto-correcting or auto-suggesting tooltips that can kind of just automatically help assist with people that are using the site in various ways. Obviously, there's a lot more than that, but the general idea is having certain tools or plugins on your site that can actually help people that need it. Principle 4 is robust. Content must be robust enough that it can be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents, including assistive technologies. So assistive technologies refer to any particular piece of software that you may download to a local computer that actually provides some of the tools that help with web accessibility. So there are a number of different companies and products out there that anyone with a physical and mental disability can purchase, install on their computer, and use pretty much, I mean, not specifically to websites, but it'll help them interact with their computer in general. So assistive technologies is definitely, there's definitely a lot of them out there. And so, again, making sure that your website is compatible with different browsers and compatible with different assistive technologies is definitely an advantage towards overall accessibility. So not only do you want your website to be accessible, but you want it to be compatible. Maximize compatibility with current and future user agents. And again, user agents can be browsers, extensions, plugins. So making sure that not only does your website work today on these particular tools, but that next month, next year, those things will still apply, and your website will be compatible with those specific technologies. So that's kind of a glimpse as to some of the more current guidelines and trends with web accessibility. It's not specific. I didn't go into any specifics in terms of anything really tech related or anything code related, but it gives you a good general idea of the different aspects and different things involved with making a site more accessible. I encourage anyone that wants to read more to visit the w3.org site. Again, great resource, lots of information, lots of links, lots of tools, lots of useful stuff. So if anyone, and I encourage people that want to get into building sites for the medical industry or building sites for anything government related. These things are hugely important because they cater to the specific audience members and whatnot. So So here are some web accessibility tools, and these are generalized. These are not specific to WordPress or specific to any particular platform. They're just tools that can be used for any website. First one is called Essential Accessibility. This is actually based out of Toronto, Canada, and they're a company that primarily deals with assistive technologies. So they've got a solution that anyone with a physical disability can download and use to connect via the web, and a bunch of other tools that can make using and interacting with a computer and the internet a lot easier. So outside of actually making a website accessible, this goes the extra mile and says if said website is not accessible, these tools will help make it so. As well, there's a complete list of web accessibility evaluation tools on the w3.org site. And again, the evaluation tools are specific to actually being able to evaluate how accessible your website is. So for the most part, these particular tools will allow you to drop in a URL. It's going to fire up your website, and it's going to point out all the different areas that are not accessible. And also give you the opportunity to figure out ways of improving them or resolving them. We've got a couple of other ones. There's Contrast A, which is a really cool tool for color combinations, for color blindness. So if you want to figure out how to create color combinations that are going to be accessible to those that have color blindness or difficulties with their vision, it's a great tool. It's got your color wheels and a whole bunch of other tools that allow you to choose combinations. They'll actually allow you to preview combinations as well. So you can preview background colors against foreground text. For instance, if you want to do that, you can test different background and foreground color combinations on top of each other just to see how they interact, I guess, how they are visualized together and whatnot. So that's a great tool. Wave is probably the best evaluation tool that I've found thus far. And again, it's a site that when you launch, it asks you to type in your URL. You enter in your URL, and it fires up your website like within the site itself. So it kind of frames in your site, and it points out all the areas that you've missed in terms of accessibility, which is really, really helpful when obviously you want to improve the accessibility of your site. It's going to tell you everything you did wrong, which is great. The functionality accessibility analyzer is a bit different. So it actually evaluates the accessibility of the actual script, whereas Wave is more content-based. It's evaluating your content, where the functionality accessibility evaluator is more markup-based and script-based for resources and websites and other things like that. The fourth one here is a multimedia access generator. So it creates captions for audio or video, which is kind of cool for people that have hearing, or I guess, yeah, obviously for the hearing impaired, you create captions, things like that. Which is, it's free to use, and I tested it out, it works pretty well. Okay, so yeah, so those are just a handful of tools that I showcased. There's a lot more. If you're very interested in making your websites more accessible, I encourage you to do more research, really get deep into it, find out the tools that work best for you, and start implementing them. So now, alongside of website accessibility, WordPress community has also organized accessibility for its platform. This I pulled off, I can't remember, I believe the WordPress accessibility group, I pulled this quote where it states, WordPress with a high quality theme works right out of the box to help you keep your site accessible. A great deal of work is done for you. You still have to take the time and patience to maintain those accessibility standards in creating your content. So WordPress out of the box is accessible. The focus is more on making sure that anything you build into it, or anything you add to it is also accessible. WordPress is a dedicated group that is focused on WordPress accessibility, which is the WordPress accessibility group, which you can find at make.wordpress.org/accessibility. A lot of great stuff there. A lot of people have been contributing. There's a lot of great resources. There's a forum there. You can see what people have been asking and what people have been doing. Great resource. The WordPress accessibility group has contributed thus far. WordPress Accessibility Codex, which is fantastic. Theme accessibility audit documentation. So if you're building custom themes and you want to find out what WordPress is deemed as accessibility standards, they have got documentation on that, which is fantastic. Because anyone that builds custom themes, being able to validate script and being able to audit themes for specific functionality or specific accessibilities is a great tool to make sure that your themes are top-notch and that they adhere to these specific guidelines. And they also provided a WordPress accessibility useful tools list, which is a list of specific plugins, specific tools that can be used specifically in and with WordPress, which is kind of nice for those that build WordPress websites. There's a bunch of different tools. I'm going to go over a couple, but there are plenty more to look at. So I suggest anyone that's interested in learning more about these tools should definitely go to make.wordpress.org/accessibility. All of these links are on my presentation, which will be available to everyone, so you don't have to worry about writing down anything. Anyone that's interested can definitely access my presentation and get all the links from there. So like I said, there are a long list of useful WordPress tools. Here are a few that I've used in the past that I've particularly found to be very useful. First one is WP Accessibility, which is a plugin that helps correct a variety of common accessibility problems in WordPress themes. While most accessibility issues can't be addressed without directly changing your theme, WP Accessibility adds a number of helpful accessibility features with a minimum amount of setup for expert knowledge. So if you're not a developer and you're not 100% keen on code, WP Accessibility does a lot of that stuff for you, which is great. Even though you have to understand the concepts, you don't have to actually understand the technology part, the logic behind it. You just have to know how it works and how to use it. There's Zoom, which is a small solution for improving your website's attractiveness. And it basically just allows you to zoom into certain parts of your website, which is kind of cool for anyone that has visual impairments. If they want to read a specific section of your site, they can easily zoom in and kind of like, I guess, any like Illustrator or Photoshop, zoom in and out so that things are smaller or bigger, which helps in overall, which helps users that have sight or vision impairments. Font Resizer is another one for visual impairments. Basically just a tool that allows you to increase and decrease your font sizes. We've used this for any sites that are relative to the medical industry or for elderly care, or anything that's going to any site that their audience is going to be either elderly or people with visual impairments. This tool allows you to increase and decrease font sizes without actually changing any of the site itself, which is kind of a nice tool. So that was the last slide. Again, there are a bunch more tools that you can access. Those are just a few of the ones that we've used. But again, this particular topic is massive. It's a beast of a topic. For me to go in detail over everything, I could probably spend a day on it. So what I really wanted to do is give you kind of to open that door and to say, hey, these are the kinds of things you should be looking out for. These are the kinds of guidelines and the specific components of website accessibility that you should be aware of. And if this is something that you want to add to your site, or if you're intrigued about building sites that are more accessible, I definitely recommend doing your research, getting involved. I guess I can open the floor for any questions or any comments. Sure.
Like you were saying, you can really go in deep with the amount of stuff to cover every disability out there to make it accessible. Do you happen to have present any numbers on, say, like the top 2 or 3 things that are major problems. I mean, it's unfortunate to look at it as a numbers game, but, you know,
Right.
spending 4 or 5 days developing something for one person, which may never go to your website,
Sure.
you know, are there top things that we should look out for? And
I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, I think in terms of websites, you know, in terms of like browsers and screen resolutions, we're always looking for the most common, right? You're not going to build a site for a resolution that 1% of the world's people use because that's a waste of time. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at. You know, what are the more common, I guess, aspects of web accessibility? I think for the most part, and what's been a lot of focus is obviously on visual impairments. So a lot of tools and a lot of the plugins and stuff that are available usually combat that a lot. So that would probably be like the most, I would say. I mean, I could be wrong, I don't have definitive numbers, but from what I've seen and what I've researched, a lot of stuff is geared towards visually impaired. A lot of other things have to do with, you know, even just the, like I did mention, like the keyboard accessibility, so making certain functions accessible by keyboard, as well as the like providing captions and stuff for the hearing impaired. Those kinds of things are also popular. It's a bit tough to say. I mean, I don't have any like specific stats on them, but there's definitely a range that's more common than others, which I would agree with you on that. So, you know, those are the types of things that you definitely want to like research specific stats on before you really get into it. Because you don't want to. Again, you're not going to spend all your time and money developing a site that may only have 1% of the population. You want to be able to help the masses. So, understanding what's more common than others is definitely the first approach to really getting into it, I guess. But for the most part, I mean, their ideal is to target everyone. I mean, obviously, you can't make a site that is 100% accessible, or that's 100% of the people are going to be able to use. Even those that don't have any impairments or any challenges in life, I mean, you still can't build a site that's 100% going to cater to them, whether it be their perception or how they understand it or how they use it. There's always going to be flaws there. So I think ideally they're trying to attack all different aspects, but I think for the most part, you know, the visual and the physical impairments are probably more popular than, let's say, like neurological or you know, anything mental based. I would say probably. So, but then again, you know, don't quote me on any hard stats. But from what I've seen and what I've researched, that's kind of where it's most popular, if that helps. Anyone else? Yeah, sure.
So do you have like a checklist? I mean, I was just looking at like the W3K link, and there's like 100 different tools. Do you have like a checklist you use to say, okay, before I launch something or publish something, I hit wave, I check, you know, these 5 things. Do you have something like that?
I mean, yeah, basically, I mean, the ones that I kind of presented are the ones that we use.
Okay.
The ones that I've used in the past. I mean, in terms of implementation, my company is still in the process of putting together like a streamlined procedure where it's, okay, the site's we run it through these evaluation tools, we add these plugins, and you know, it's nice and clean and nicely accessible. We're still working on that. There is, you know, pretty confident that with the amount of tools and the research out there, that we can find a concise way to streamline that specific procedure.
Yeah.
But ideally, the ones that I showcase are the ones that we use and we've used in the past. So we do, we're definitely trying to, you know, build an easy way that we can get all our sites to be accessible. And obviously, we haven't implemented this particular, you know, these particular accessibility trends with all of our sites. We do the best we can. You know, we work with clients and obviously their budgets and whatnot. But any you know, major client or major project, we're always pushing this stuff on them because I feel it's important, and I'm trying to advocate its importance to the general population as well as those with disabilities. So the answer is yes, we do have a checklist, but it's not like an official checklist as of yet.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do.
Because I think I can answer, not answer, but I can help out with your 2 questions. There there's a gentleman by the name of Carl Groves who does a lot of accessibility with the Accessibility Task Force and W3C, et cetera. He speaks on this topic, he rants about it more accurately. He put out a post what's today, the 14th. So 9 days ago, he put out a post, the 6 simplest web accessibility tests anybody can do. And it's a great list. And I'm just going to read off
Please do.
the 6 bullet points. Unplug your mouse.
Wow, fantastic. See that?
Number 2, turn on high contrast mode. Number 3, turn off images. Still one of my favorites. Number 4, check for captions or transcripts. That's key if you have video, audio, etc. Click on field labels. This is huge. If you have forms, you know, the piece of text next to the field, clicking on that for tab order and other things, that's important. And turn off CSS.
Even very simple ways to
Yeah.
putting it, and essentially what these simple tests are kind of just putting yourself in the shoes of those that may have challenges. Just saying, look at it or interact with a computer or website the way other people may. So those are actually great. Really simple, really straightforward, puts you in the place of those individuals, and actually forces you to test out the sites and forces you to kind of come up with solutions for those issues.
I love unplug your mouse. That
Yeah.
immediately
That's
goes to like
yeah.
a wave tool. It's like you have 6 alerts, whatever.
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden when you're using it and you don't have, you're like, crap, I want that.
So I think those tests were more, I guess, instead of them being virtual tools, they're more like what you can actually do while you're sitting in front of your computer.
Because when you feel the frustration, it's a whole
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, put yourself in the shoes of those that have challenges is definitely the easiest way to figure out what's wrong with your site. First and foremost.
I'm going to tweet out that link under that.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I'd love to grab that. Sure.
So, when I'm teaching my students, one of the things I tell them, fill in all the alt tags, make sure, because of these reasons. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say, how accessible would you say that WordPress is out of the box?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't.
I mean, it depends on the theme, obviously, because I know that changes.
Are you talking about like WordPress core, like, or front end, back end?
A front end, like just as a visitor to the site, how accessible would you say it is generally out of the box?
I
Not
mean,
taking into account like a theme, like if we just use the standard WordPress theme.
like 2013. I mean, it's. I haven't really done any tests on, let's say, WordPress core or any of the WordPress plugins. I can answer that accurately. I've done tests on a lot of actually major sites. You'd be surprised. You go onto Wave and you type in big sites, you'd be surprised at what you see. So it's kind of an eye opener. I mean, the stuff is not really that new. It was established in '97, so it's fairly long running movement and kind of long running organization. And so it's definitely picking up momentum, but it's still ways to go. So in short, I can't really evaluate WordPress on that level, but I have done some tests on other sites.
Okay.
So you should. I mean, if anyone's curious on how well WordPress does, I'd be interested. If anyone does a test, email me jordan@genius.ca. Let me know how it goes because I'd love to know myself.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything else?
I just wondered, does the Americans with Disabilities Act address anything on the websites, or is it just strictly for retail, real world establishment?
I'm not too sure. I'm not American, so I don't.
The ADA Act references the Workforce Investment Act now, which is being updated with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines version 2.
Okay.
So it's not a direct reference, but it's an indirect reference. And if you have a good lawyer, for example, they will draw the connection for you in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and if I may, the Ontario government has said that all of their websites, the government of Ontario's websites, must be completely compatible with what they call the AODA by 2014.
That's pretty much what the United States government websites are now.
Well, they're supposed to be. They're not. They still. I think it's still a couple of years depending on the age of the site. And each state has different guidelines. New York State are actually more restrictive than the federal guidelines.
What I was thinking about is, you know, we're talking about you don't want to design for the 1%,
Right.
but the Americans with Disabilities Act Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree, of course.
Because if they can't access that site, they're 100% locked out.
Sure, I mean, I think everyone definitely is, should have access to the internet, I think, 100%.
And actually, the AODA.ca, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which it's called. They actually have like content main menu, default colors, high contrast. Like it'll actually, you'll see it in a second.
Yeah, I've been on the site,
So there you go. So that's the Ontario version of it anyways.
Right.
But I know that all of their websites, they're all panicking.
Yeah.
Because they've, the government said this is what it has to be, and now all those sites now have to be compliant with and there's actually a little bit of the ADA there.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, a lot of government-based agencies are revamping their sites to be accessible. So the government is definitely caught on, and they understand that. There's a large population of people that.
It actually says there, this is not a government site.
Oh.
That's interesting. Didn't even notice that.
On the topic of simple tools for testing too, an interesting experience is if you just install a screen and use it on your site.
Yeah.
Definitely a different experience trying to understand what's on that page.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the readers are the assistive programs that read out different alternative texts and whatnot on websites.
Yeah.
Those are widely used, from what I know. A lot of different people use those. So making sure that everything is tagged and the text alternatives are entered in correctly is definitely beneficial. A lot of people use screen readers. And basically, what the screen reader does, it just reads out things on the page. It tells you what's tagged and whatnot. So being able to have that set up on your site is definitely an advantage. A lot of people use it. So, like I said, it's definitely growing. A lot more. The medical industry and a lot of different government organizations are going to be turning to web accessibility for all their sites in the near future. So, I think anyone that's a web developer or owns a web development company, if you want to get your foot in the door with government agencies and the medical industry, definitely get on board with website accessibility. And if you're a WordPress advocate, get on board with WordPress accessibility as well.
Thank you.